Reporter Jeff Gehrman was an old-school journalist, the kind of guy who would roll up his sleeves and ask the tough questions. He made a career out of holding the powerful accountable. Jeff worked for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. His investigations looked at everyone from law enforcement to corporations to local politicians. One of the local politicians Jeff wrote about was a man named Robert Tellis. Tellis was the Clark County public administrator. He touted himself as an honest politician and a family man. But that reputation was destroyed by a couple of things. A domestic violence arrest where Tellis keeps telling the officer he's a public official, and the work of Jeff Gehrman. Jeff published a series of investigative pieces uncovering turmoil in the administrator's office and claims of bullying, retaliation, and an inappropriate relationship between Tellis and a staffer. After the articles were published, Tellis lost his re-election bid. His life began to seemingly spiral out of control. Then 3 months later, Jeff Gehrman was stabbed to death. The murder sent shockwaves through his newsroom, and investigators quickly followed a trail, including images of the alleged killer that led to Tellis, who was arrested and charged with murder. Tellis says he's innocent and has indicated he was framed, and today he was back on the stand in his own defense to tell us his version of where he was and what he was doing at the time of the murder. What a big day inside that courtroom. Clark County, Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada. Robert Tellis, the former politician on trial for murder, taking the stand in his own defense against the advice of his lawyers, telling his story in today's cross-examination. Wow, we're going to get into a lot of it. But of course, one thing that Robert Tellis has been telling us is that I didn't do it. And you'd expect an accused murderer to say that they didn't do it on the witness stand. Almost every trial I've covered where a criminal defendant has taken the stand, they have said, I didn't do it. There was one where she never approached the subject and was convicted, but every other defendant I've ever seen testify always says they didn't do it. And sometimes they have no idea who did it, and sometimes they have their own theory. Robert Tellis is a guy with a theory, and it has something to do with the realty companies that did it. I didn't follow it exactly, but it has something to do with the work he was doing and the sale and resale of properties that he, as a hawk, as someone representing the people, would protect people from. And there were others involved because, much like another criminal defendant we covered here, he said he was framed. Clearly said he was framed. Now, the evidence of the frame job here, not quite to the extent that the defense presented in Karen Reed's trial. In fact, it's not even close. I mean, the evidence of the frame job against Robert Tellis is pretty much solely coming from Robert Tellis himself. It's a way for Tellis to tell us why incriminating evidence is found in his house. Right? Everything that makes him look bad, of course, because I was framed. But then you've got to take the next step, which is provide some evidence of it, some motivation as to why, something other than the words of the accused. And we really haven't seen that in this case. So his direct examination wasn't really a direct examination. It was a narrative where he just spoke and told his story directly to the jury. However uncomfortable it may have been for the jury at times, he told his story. Now the question is, will he survive this cross-examination in the eyes of the jury? Because it was intense. It was brutal at times, I believe, for Robert Tellis. But I'm not the one deciding the case. It'll be the same people who did not re-elect Robert Tellis who will decide this case, the folks of Clark County, Nevada. And joining us right now from the courthouse, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who's in the middle of it all. Matt, great to see you. Cross-examination is always, I believe, the most pun intended, telling part of someone's testimony because you're being asked questions that are a little uncomfortable. Pretty fiery today.
Yeah, it was fiery. Vinny, nice to see you as well. And wow, it was one for the books today. The 14th floor here, it was packed to this courtroom full of everyone, including trial watchers. Everyone was on pins and needles during this cross-examination, and that courtroom completely quiet because Tella's on the stand. He's very soft-spoken, but you could tell that he was either getting irritated or uncomfortable when he was grilled on some bad facts, including the cut-up shoe and the straw hat found at his home with the execution of the search warrant, victim's home and personal information on his cell phone, his car matching the killer's SUV, and his DNA under the victim's nails. Now, he claimed that he's being framed, items were planted. At one point, Vinny, the jury stopped taking notes altogether. Many of the jury members were just seated back, watching him. Their arms were folded, their arms were crossed, paying close attention to him. And then I look over at the gallery where the family is of this victim, Jeff Gehrman, and many of those family members just shaking their head as he began to tell his story.
And I understand from their perspective it's got to be utterly frustrating, but the good news is when a defendant testifies, much more is revealed inside of a courtroom. And I think the jury has a much better opportunity to really evaluate the case and evaluate the accused. So give us a little more of a description of the testimony from Tellis.
Right, so it started out with more of his narrative. Again, his attorneys are not asking him any questions. This defendant is on the stand and asking for his attorneys to put exhibits up on the Elmo or to put them on the monitor as he kind of just walks the jury through his idea of in his narrative of what took place. Now, big moment was when he appeared to cry and break down on the stand. The jury was taking notes as he said that the assassins killed Gehrman, or an assassin. Police are framing him, and then he was talking about his alibi. The dynamic in the courtroom also a little bit interesting, too, because you have the DA's office within this courthouse, and the DA, Clark County DA Steve Wolfson, who's been very outspoken on this case here in Clark County. You can see him during this testimony seated in the gallery. He was paying close attention. A lot of the court watchers today were you know, experts and people within the law world that were working in the building and knew this defendant. This person was well known. So that was another different dynamic that we don't always see in a courthouse.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of one of their own. He's like a county worker. He's a lawyer. He's an official. He's working supposedly on behalf of the people. And, you know, you get to know each other. And, I mean, they must have been shocked when all this happened. And now even more jaw-dropping listening to him explain things on the stand. So here we are. It's Thursday. What can we expect next?
Okay, so we're a little bit behind schedule according to the court. Remember, they had just scheduled for 2 weeks for this trial to take place, and tomorrow we're expecting more of the narrative. The defendant will be back on the stand for day 3 for redirect, so to speak, to once again address what he wants to with this jury before the recross, I guess. And then the state does plan to call a couple witnesses for their rebuttal case, including the lead investigator that handled this case. And then we could see, depending on how scheduling goes, possibly closing arguments as early as tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, we could be in a Friday verdict watch. Wouldn't be the first time, Matt.
Could be.
Wouldn't be the first time. Matt Johnson in Vegas. Good luck, Matt. We'll talk tomorrow. All right, I want to bring in our body language expert, author of the New York Times bestselling book, You Can't Lie to Me, Janine Driver, with us. Janine, thanks so much. We've got another round of testimony we need to go through from Robert Tellis back on the stand today. So let's get to it, because here he's making the denial.
I did not cut up a shoe and hide it under my couch. I did not cut up a hat and put it in an open door of my toolbox. I did not kill Mr. Gehrman, so I did not take a bag with my children's basketball and football out of the bin. and used during the commission of a murder. So, again, I didn't kill Mr. Gurman. I am not the kind of person who would stab someone.
The objection was sustained.
Okay. So, I've never beat anybody up. I've never killed anybody. I didn't kill Mr. Gurman. And that's my testimony.
Okay, Janine, what'd you think of the denial? Was he telling the truth?
Was he watching last night? Was he watching? I think he was watching us last night. All right, so here he has denials finally. He's saying, I did not. Here's the problem. It's still contrite because he's not saying I didn't do it. He's saying, he almost sounds like a Dr. Seuss. Like I can see Jimmy Kimmel turning this into a kid's book. I did not cut up the hat. I did not walk down the street. I mean, this is not his normal cadence. You can see when and hear him, his cadence does come in eventually where he says, I didn't do it. I don't believe him. And I don't believe that you believe him either because I'm reading your body language. So I don't care what you said to the American public here. I don't buy it for 1 second.
I am
Nice
looking at this thing straight down the. No, I've made a mind. I'm not buying his story. I would not here or there. I would not, do it anywhere. That's what I'm hearing too. I'm hearing the same thing.
All right, when I have my show here on Court TV, Janine Driver in the driver's seat, I'm going to have you as a guest on my show. Listen, when he says, I did not stab someone, his tone of voice goes down here, Vinny. Again, indicative, over 85% of the time when someone's lying, the tone of voice goes down. We've got a lot of body language tonight, and I hope we get to it, including him, that fake crying that we're going to read.
Oh, we're going to get to it all. We're going to get to it all. I want to introduce our think tank, though. First, joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy, also with us, former criminal defense attorney Kirk Nurmi, and El Presidente of the West Coast Trial Lawyers and former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Eklund, how good is tell us on the stand? I mean, this is what you want from a client, right?
No. This is the time in which, defense attorneys, it's like the best case with a case this serious. This is the best case scenario in which you have crazy, because the issue is it's not just Nevada versus Mr. Tellis. It's Nevada versus Mr. Tellis and Mr. Tellis's narcissism. He is also an attorney, so I could only imagine what is happening behind the scenes. You can tell when a client is, if you take evidence, you can tell when a client is lying because they testify in the narrative. That means that they just let him go. And all the prosecutor had to do was just take that transcript and just deny every line. And it's beautifully executed. And it looks so bad. It's just like a reminder of, I have a proverbial, legal quicksand, and that's primal fear. And the only move he has is to go full crazy. And I think it's coming.
You think it's coming? He's still on the stand. It still could come. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a listen to more of Robert Tellis on the stand and what he did that day.
That day, September 2nd of 2022, as I mentioned earlier, I sent a text message, hung around home, had no watching TV or working. Somewhere probably around 10-ish, I went for a walk. Came back home, and then got ready and went off to the gym. And if I could republish T2, as I said before, I'm techie, right? You see that my actual login, after you consider everything I do, to get ready to go to the gym, when they were ready to scan my phone, It was at 12:09. And I say it was my phone because, again, because I'm a techie person, the tag that was on my keychain, I abandoned it long ago. You know, so that was from my phone.
Janine Driver, why am I so uncomfortable watching him? Like, I'm not even in the courtroom. I'm uncomfortable watching him.
Because you're a human being and we have mirror neurons. I remember back in the day, who was the track star, Marion Jones? She lied about taking steroids, and I remember watching her and I was like, ooh, she's totally lying. And without even using any of my expertise, when we watch someone, we begin to feel how they're feeling. This is why no one cried with Amber Heard's, like, you know, the dog fake crying stuff, right? Here's what happened right now, Vinny, that you're picking up on, even if it's subconsciously. He does, on the left of our screen, I don't know if the camera's reversed here, but on the left of our screen, he does a shoulder shrug when talking. This is indicative of uncertainty, right? And so if you're on a date and someone says, I'd love to get together again, yeah, keep your profile in Bumble wide open, or Hinge, or wherever you're at, because there's some uncertainty here. He then, his face throws a party for us, Vinny, and you at home. He leaks disgust, which is this nose wrinkle, contempt, which is moral superiority. We see this a lot with powerful liars, where they think they're getting away with it. We saw it with Jussie Smollett, we saw it with Amber Heard, the list goes on and on. Right here, contempt, and then he's breathless again. We saw this last night, Vinny. As he starts to talk, he forgets to breathe, and this is where he's talking about getting ready to go to the gym. He also, when he talks about getting ready and went to the gym, he drops the pronoun, and I went to the gym. And we also see and hear this kind of behavior with people who are holding back the truth.
All right, let's run it back past the think tank. Kirk Nurmi, your thoughts about this guy testifying. You've had defendants' clients testify before.
Oh, Vinny. Let's get Janine's read on your body language now, huh? But listen, you know, we've heard a Dr. Seuss reference. I didn't go to Harvard, so the analogy I'm going to make is Wile E. Coyote, right? Remember those Saturday morning cartoons where he thinks he's going to get the Roadrunner? He pushes down, the dynamite blows up on himself. That's really what we're seeing every time Mr. Tellus speaks. We saw it on direct and we saw it on cross. It doesn't make any sense. He's got this theory, you know, this real estate company did this, but he's on tape doing it. He's got the same shoes. None of it makes any sense, and he's just digging his own grave further and further. Now, at the same time, he really can't hurt himself because the evidence is so strong. But yeah, he's just blowing up dynamite in his face every other second during this testimony.
All right, let's see some emotion from the courtroom. Let's roll it. Here he is crying.
This is J2. This is I2. And this is J2. So I found my wife sitting on the floor in our bedroom in the middle of this mess. And so this for me was, you know, the thing that just broke me. I'm sorry. I knew I didn't do this thing, and yet the police claim to have this evidence. They did what they did to me, and I have $1 million life insurance policy. I didn't want my family to have to go through more torture, and so I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought, you know what, if I can avoid the pain that they're going to suffer during this whole circus, then and put some money into their hands to make up for me not being there, then maybe this is the thing to do. But it was, for me, never. I'm not guilty. I didn't kill Mr. German. But as you can see, I attempted suicide.
Janine Driver, I know you wanted to talk about that one.
I think he attended the Amber Heard fake acting school. That was atrocious. I only have a second here, so I want to make this fast. This is a blocking behavior. This fake crying, he forgot to tell the tears to show up. They weren't there. If we go old school, we saw this with Susan Smith, who drowned her 2 kids, also all over the media, covering her face, fake crying. Neil Entwistle killed his young daughter back in the day. This blocking behavior, Vinny and you at home, it's shielding himself from this conversation. It's a desire to create distance, and this is a hot spot. And he's not looking down right, which is internal emotions. Instead, he's putting on the show right here for us. And he said this, the thing that just broke me down. First of all, the thing is a distancing language. It's not personal, right? And then I want you to think about the word just. Just is a minimizing word. So if I said, Vinny, I want to ask you just a couple questions, then that's a minimizing word. I'm really saying I'm nervous about what I'm going to ask you.
All right, Janine Driver staying with us. The music is playing. We've got more coming up, plus next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the murder of 13-year-old Madeline Soto and newly released police interviews with Madeline's mom, Jen Soto. What does she say? What does she know? We investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least 2 sides to it.
To dive into the latest.
Oh my God.
And breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside.
I've never seen that in a discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
And outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. There he is, Robert Tellis and the prosecutor. It was a rough cross-examination, folks. Rough cross-examination for Robert Tellis. Let's bring back in our body language expert, Janine Driver, who is still with us. The true test. I don't know if he passed the first test, but the true test is cross-examination. So let's take a look at Robert Tellis on cross.
You don't doubt that whoever that is killed Mr. Gehrman. That would be fair, right?
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned one of the things that struck you was you watched the autopsy, or you saw the autopsy photos, and you were struck by the violence of it, correct?
No, sir.
No, you did not? Were you bothered by the photographs?
I was.
And why is that?
Gruesome. I'm not used to seeing dead people.
Okay. I think you said it was ugly. Is that correct?
I may have.
All right. And you had told this jury that you felt like it looked like someone who knew what they were doing. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You believe this was a professional hit?
And that's what I believe.
Okay. So, and you believe this killer is kind of almost like someone hired to do this job, like an assassin, essentially, right?
That is what I believe, yes, sir.
All right. Now, I want to take a look at this picture for a second. The assassin seems to be wearing a giant sun hat. It's a pretty big hat, right?
Yes, sir.
It's fairly noticeable, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You think that might attract attention?
I would think so.
Okay, but this is a professional.
Right.
All right. And this professional is also wearing a bright orange shirt, correct?
Yes, sir.
Professional?
Yes, sir.
But wouldn't that attract attention?
I think that's part of the reason, actually. If I could elaborate.
No. You believe that professional assassins want to draw attention to themselves when they're carrying out murder. That's your testimony?
When they're framing someone, yes, sir.
So the answer to my question is yes. You believe professional assassins like to draw attention to themselves.
It depends on what the nature of their goal is, and if it's to frame someone, yes, sir.
So the answer to my question is yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Janine, how did he handle that? What are you seeing?
Where do we begin? All right, he does a lot of this blocking behavior. Now we have it hands in his fist. We have his whole palm on his hand. We see the back of the hand later. This blocking touches, these self-touches, Vinny and you at home, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is responsible for calming the body down. Calm down. So we see a lot of that here. A question was asked, you believe a professional assassin did this? The answer should be what? Yes. But he doesn't. He said, that's what I believe. He gives me 4 words. The strongest acceptance and strongest denial is a yes or a no. When people give us too many words, truthful people convey, liars try to convince. And right here, again, terrible at lying. I wish I could be in the courtroom and look at the jurors, and if I can for a quick second, from what I'm understanding, the jurors' arms are folded, right? This is what I'm hearing, right? So thank you. I want to talk about this. Folded arms. What is happening here? This increases our determination and perseverance and problem solving. A lot of us think that crossed arms is bored, disinterested, defensive, but here's the deal. When we cross our arms, Vinny and you at home, we're activating both sides of our brain. Our right brain, which is intuitive and likes to be quick on its feet, and our left brain, which is facts and figures. So it will increase our cognitive functions by incorporating this. People will solve more difficult problems with crossed arms. Think about it at the end of the year, if you're in a business, you look around, what do we want to do in 2025? I'm retired law enforcement, ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. There's a scene of a crime. You see the cop, she arrives, and what does she do? Crosses her arms, she's looking. The jurors may look bored, but they're activating both sides of their brain here. And guess what? When we fold our arms, we're resistant to what is being presented. I don't think they're buying it.
All right, let's bring back in our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, Nima Romani still with us. Nima, you're the former prosecutor, federal prosecutor. Would you be licking your chops on cross-examination? And have you ever had a case with an assassin wearing a sun hat?
Vinny, if you're a prosecutor, you live for this type of cross-examination. I mean, this rarely happens where someone takes a stand and is lying through their teeth. And it's the defendant who's been advised by his lawyers not to do so. So you obviously want to give him as much rope as you can to hang himself, which is exactly what he's doing now. Obviously, Janine's the expert, but you don't have to go to Harvard to know someone is lying to you. And he's lying through his teeth. But like Kirk said, really, what does he have to lose? This is a textbook first-degree lying in wait, mandatory life case. So football season is around the corner. This is the equivalent of a Hail Mary. He's going to throw it up, maybe do 6 or 7 laterals, but it's not going to work, just like it doesn't work in the courtroom. It won't work on the football field, and we're probably going to get a verdict shortly after closing arguments in this case, Vinny.
Kirk, I have a quick follow-up with you on this issue, because you're in Arizona, in the desert, right? Hot sun. So do the assassins in Arizona wear sun hats?
No, but the gardeners do, and the construction workers wear those bright orange things. So, yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like you could easily say, hey, that's what he was. Maybe he was disguising himself as that. But, you know, tellers can't even make any reasonable story up, even if he's been sitting in for prison for 2 years. So, you know, it's just hard to say what he is possibly thinking, but he's obviously has an ego. He thinks the jury's going to buy whatever he has to say.
All right, let's get back to more of Tellis cross-examination. Here, it's all about the affair that he allegedly had. Let's take a look.
When you spoke with him, were you truthful in your interview?
Not entirely, no.
Okay, what were you untruthful about?
About the extent of the relationship with me and Roberta Lee Kennett.
Okay. What was different? What did you say versus the truth?
I said that, you know, she and I had no affair, but, you know, regrettably, we did have, you know, and when I say regrettably, I think we both regret the mistake, but we had a romantic affair with each other.
Okay, so you did lie to him, correct, on that topic?
I didn't think that was for the public's business.
All right, Janine, I think he's telling the truth about the affair.
Listen, as this begins here, this particular clip, we see this like grimace where the mouth is like pulled up and in very, very quickly. This is a brief involuntary expression of discomfort, fear, maybe even some surprise. What's happening here is the amygdala is firing off, and that's connected with emotional reactions. We call it a micro expression. It happens in a blink of an eye, and you can spot it, and his face is telling a story. I think the name Tell Us is perfect because he's tell us this and tell us that. It's like nonstop with his body language is revealing more than he may think. By the way, in the earlier clip, I forgot to mention, his lips pull in and down. I can't even do it. And we see that with people who are connected with shame. And so earlier in the clip, when he was talking about, oh, this murderer, you know, this hired assassin did this, and you know, how this was so hard for him to find out about, he showed shame and it was out of place. As is this right here, it makes sense, right? He lied about the affair. So here it kind of makes sense that we're getting this discomfort or fear or surprise, and his face is telling us a story.
All right, when we come back, Tell Us is going to tell us his explanation for the DNA under the victim's fingernails.
Let's look at these windows. Bottom right-hand corner, sir. The front windows are not tinted, are they?
No, sir.
But the back ones are, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's cue over to your car. Your front windows are not tinted, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And your back ones are, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Coincidence?
I don't think so. I think the killer got a car like mine.
That would be a coincidence, right? That would, or it's part of the framing to find a car just like his. That would be a great job by the assassin. All right, body language expert Janine Driver still with us. This is probably the most important and critical evidence for the prosecution, the DNA of the defendant underneath the victim's fingernails. Here's the cross-examination on that issue.
You were here yesterday and you talked for approximately 2 hours. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
And then you came here this morning and you talked for another hour or so, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's one thing I didn't hear you mention. The DNA. I'd like to talk about that with you. You're not disputing that your DNA is underneath Mr. Gehrman's fingernails, are you?
Yes, I am.
Okay. But you've heard the testimony. It's there, correct?
I don't know if it was there or at what point it might have gotten there, sir.
Okay. I'm not asking you how it got there. Are you really denying that your DNA is underneath the fingernails?
Without knowing the truth, yes, I am.
Okay. Well, you've heard witnesses testify.
Right.
So the DNA lab's in on it too?
I don't know. I don't know at what point. I don't know what point this sample was collected.
Sir, please tell this jury, how in the world does your DNA get underneath Mr. Gehrman's fingernails?
I don't know because I did not kill Mr. Gehrman.
You have no idea how it could have gotten underneath your fingernails, correct?
Under my fingernails?
I'm sorry, under his fingernails, correct?
I don't know that it ever was, sir.
All right. Let's do it another way. You and Mr. Gehrman are not friends, are you?
No.
Okay. You don't hang out with him ever?
Sir, I did not ever hang out with Mr. Gehrman when he was alive.
My question is yes. You didn't hang out with him ever, correct?
I did not.
He's never invited you over to his house.
No, sir.
You've never hung out, had drinks at a bar, correct?
No, sir.
There would be really no opportunity for him ever to put his hands on you in any sort of social situation, correct?
Correct, sir.
And yet, these two people who are not friends, your DNA just happens to be underneath his fingernails, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. You just don't think it was legitimately placed there, correct? Or are you just ignoring the testimony of all of the witnesses that talked about how your DNA was underneath the fingernails?
Again, at some point or another, I believe it was planted because I did not kill Mr. Gehrman. So,
and by that logic, if you believe it was planted, you are at least admitting, yes, my DNA is underneath his fingernails, correct? Can you at least agree with me on that?
Whether it came from a sample of fingernails or a different sample altogether, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, sir.
The answer to my question is yes. You're at least acknowledging
No, sir.
Physical DNA is underneath the fingernail?
No, sir.
Okay, great. So you're just going to disregard what all the other DNA witnesses said about this, correct?
Okay,
that's fair. That's fine. Totally fine.
Okay, Gene, this conspiracy just got larger, by the way. What'd you think of his denials?
I want to talk about this. I love that you're talking about this, Vinny, right now. All right, the hand in a fist resting on the face is a lot happening here, so I'm glad that we have an opportunity to talk about it. I don't think we've talked about this with past cases. This is indicating an analytical mindset, and it's providing comfort during a concentration moment, right, while we're concentrating, because he's still looking up and paying attention. This helps steady the mind. So when we see this hand in the fist, it helps steadying the mind, it's steadying the head. Here's what else happens with that hand in a fist, Vinny and you at home. It involves thinking, self-control. It is often related to the fight or flight response. This is the part, it can literally activate a piece of our brain, this clenching of the fist, the sympathetic nervous system, and it prepares us for action, fight or flight. But the problem is he can't do either of those things. So what is happening is he's likely holding something back. He's handling it with as much self-control as he can. He's doing a high-level pacifier, high stress and anxiety, and he's blocking what? A third of his body for us. So this is very suspicious. He's staying in this move. We have something called posture gesture merger, PGM, and we move our bodies when we're organically telling the truth, but he is remaining in this position, this hiding. It's playing hide and seek with a third of his body, and I think he's playing hide and seek with way more than a third of the truth.
Janine Driver, thank you so much. Great to see you. Let's bring back in our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, and Nima Romani. Eklund, the DNA, this is the most significant piece of evidence directly tying him to the victim, something he didn't even talk about in his direct.
Yeah, because this is what it looks like when you hold a politician to accountability, like in real time. It's layers to the narcissism, because I keep forgetting he's a lawyer too. So what's happening is he is doing everything his attorneys warned him not to do. And it's just blowing up in his face. And you can tell he probably has never been to therapy, but this is what accountability looks like in real time. And he is trying to figure out whether he is going to go full Clockwork Orange or he is going to go comatose, because these are the only options he has left. I think because he did so much the elaborate ruse to disguise himself, he really thought he had it, and to see it just discombobulate in real time is just breaking him.
Okay, Nima, was this perfectly done here by the prosecution in exposing Tellus?
I thought it was well done, Vinny, but it's also a very easy case. You have so much overwhelming evidence, right? You got the motive. We talked about the DNA. You got the vehicle, right? I mean, Tellus was so bad, he was trying to say that the rims were different. They were not. And then he was saying the killer had the visor down, but he didn't have the visor down. I mean, just really ridiculous stuff. And we haven't even started talking about his cell phone and the searches and all the images of the victim's house in his phone, on top of obviously the cut-up hat and the shoes, killer shoes in his home. I mean, really, it doesn't get much easier than this if you're a prosecutor, because usually you don't have this type of overwhelming evidence. And you would think a lawyer would be a lot smarter than to run those types of searches on his cell phone. But obviously he didn't, and this should be really shooting fish in a barrel, fish on a hook, watching them squirm, whatever analogy you want to use. Pretty easy for the state here.
Okay, so Kirk, give me some analysis of the way this is going, because his attorneys absolutely did not want him to testify. They advised against it, put it all on the record, et cetera, didn't ask questions for obvious reasons. Now, how much does his testimony change the case, whether it's this case or an appeal?
I don't think at all. I mean, the overwhelming evidence is there, right? As Nima just laid out, the cell phone images, the DNA that we just saw the questioning of. I don't think his lawyer's actions to put a narrative on it or his testimony is really going to move the needle with the jury or an appellate court. He got to say his piece. He got to exercise his Sixth Amendment rights. But the evidence is there, and I think any court of appeals will look at it and say the evidence is overwhelming, and there's really nothing to look at here. He may continue. He looks like he's the type of guy who might continue to write letters, write appeals to every court he can get the address to. But ultimately, in the end, I don't think any appeals court is going to overturn this conviction.
And you know, Nima, the other thing that strikes me about this defendant is he seems very similar to someone who was in a domestic situation, the way they act sort of irrationally and do things and you know, sort of lash out. That's the vibe I'm getting for him in the way he handled this thing with Gehrman, because Gehrman's investigations to a certain extent undermined his personal life, his family life, and his professional life all at once.
Well, Vinny, that's absolutely right. And that's probably why he went through so many lawyers and was representing himself before he got appointed shadow counsel. I'm sure his lawyers were advising him to take some sort of plea. I don't think the state would have offered manslaughter, but maybe second-degree murder, giving him the possibility to get out of Nevada State Prison one day. And I'm sure that's the advice that they were giving him, and he didn't like to hear that advice because he didn't want to serve any time. He wanted to walk, which was never going to happen. But I agree with you, Vinny. I think the only chance he had in this case is to say he was pushed to the brink. You know, his affair and inappropriate relationship was exposed, the other type of corruption, and somehow, some way that caused him to snap, which is why he did what he did. Maybe asked for a second-degree murder plea. I don't think the state would have offered it, but I think that's the only route in this case, Vinny.
I think the only silver lining for us tonight is that he makes politicians look really bad, more so than lawyers, because I keep calling him a politician. All right, Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Kirk Nurmi, thank you all so much. Great to have you on the program.